Are your dividends actually safe? It's always good to make sure that if you depend on the dividend income, that they will be safe and to what extent. Time and time again, I always hear of people getting screwed over for so many different reasons. Good dividend investments can keep paying you income despite tough times like recessions, hurricanes, coronavirus, or a CEO getting caught for scandals. It's good to make sure that whatever you choose to invest in, especially if it's a business, they can afford to pay out to you even when it feels like the world is going to end. If you have dividend investments, it's important that you spend some time on this checklist. Although most people are lazy or don't want to do anything, they'll come back once the big piece of shit hits the fan with their dividends, like the ones with over 10% dividend yields. I think it's worthwhile to spend just a few minutes to check up on thousands of dollars of potential dividends. If you're only getting like $10 of dividends every year from your investments, you know you barely just make enough to buy a meal at McDonald's. So I highly encourage you to check out these other videos first if you haven't already, so you can focus on building a bigger portfolio. Before we start, smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments below how you go about picking dividend investments. So in this video, I've developed a quick checklist that anyone can use. You can follow me and use Yahoo Finance. First on the checklist is to look at the EPS. This acronym stands for earnings per share. It's the same as profits that the business generates. I pray that for your dividend investment, the EPS number better be a positive number, which means positive profits. Here's Canadian Tire. They have a positive EPS, which means they generate positive profits. You'd be surprised by the number of big businesses out there that exist and generate negative profits, which means they lose investors' money. Here's Bed Bath & Beyond. They have a negative EPS, so for every day they operate, they're technically losing money for investors. Your life will be so much easier by just simply avoiding any dividend investment that has a negative EPS. Second on the checklist, you want to look at dividends being paid out per share. Make sure that the dividend is at least equal to the EPS or a smaller amount. This will ensure that the business can afford your dividends on a yearly basis by only depending on the profits that they generate. It's a pretty simple assessment. It's like if Canadian Tire makes $12.50 in profits, they should only be giving investors $12.50 or less as an allowance. Third on the list is to check how stable the business of your investment really is. So there's an army of companies out there that have profits and can afford their dividend. However, depending on the company, profits can often fluctuate all the time, and that makes the dividend more risky to depend on. For instance, companies in oil, gold, forestry, and car manufacturing are examples of industries that never have predictable level of profits every year. Profits can be a lot in one year and a lot less the next. Here's Barrick Gold. They're the world's biggest gold company, but their profits change dramatically every year. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's a lot, and sometimes it's negative. Compare this to a more stable business like Canadian Tire. Their EPS is always positive and much more stable. And here's Bed Bath & Beyond. Their EPS is headed to negative territory. You can check this yourself with different investments by clicking on the Financials tab, then going to the Income Statement tab. At the bottom, you'll see the EPS number for the different number of years. Last on the list is to ensure that the dividend investment can pay you in a bad toxic environment. The best dividend investments are always paying out much less than their profits, which means that they have a level of safety for their profits to drop or the business to experience challenges so that they can still pay out their dividends. Good companies often pay out dividends at around 30 to 80% of their profits. Anything they don't pay out, they're ideally keeping it to reinvest in the business, they're stashing it away in savings for a rainy day, or they're paying down their debts. Here's an example with TD. Their EPS is $6.25, and their dividend is $2.96, which means that their dividend is 47% of the profits. Even if TD's profits dropped in half, which must be a pretty bad yet unlikely scenario, like a housing crash or a world war, then TD would still have enough money to make their dividend payments. They wouldn't even need to tap into their savings or take on debt. Again, there could be big popular companies out there that pay out dividends more than what they generate in profits, like ExxonMobil and even Enbridge. Even though they have positive profits based on a positive EPS number, the dividend per share is higher. When the dividend amount is much more than the profit amount, you'll be asking how the hell are they paying out dividends and have lasted so long in doing so. It usually means that they took out a loan or they're divvying into their savings. Both are often red flags that you should be concerned about. It's kind of like talking about regular people who have lost their income. If they're digging into their savings or they're just blowing up their credit cards, it's something that you should be concerned about. If that's the case, then I would want to check out how much companies are actually paying out in dividends on the financial statements. To do that, you can check within the Financials tab, and within it, check the cash flow statement. First, you see the net income number at the very top, which is the company's actual profits in the last 12 months. Then you compare it to the dividends paid near the bottom. In the case of Enbridge, the company has $5.7 billion in profits, but pays out $6.4 billion in dividends, which means they're paying out $650 million more in dividends than they can afford in profits. So how are they paying it out? If the business is digging into their savings, I'd want to check their cash balance that they have on hand at the end of the period, which is right below. Looks like they have enough just to make up this difference. But how long can they do this for? Well, for Enbridge, that's enough cash to only cover 1 year of dividends. So what that means is they can't really depend on digging into their savings every year, and they're affording things by using debt. Okay, so Yahoo Finance really goofed here because they don't show how much money the company is borrowing, even though they should, because the math here doesn't work out. If you add all the numbers here, it doesn't equal to this subtotal at the bottom of the box. The difference is $6 billion in money that came from borrowings. Okay, so they borrowed $6 billion in debt, but it also says in the first line that they repaid $3.8 billion in debt. That means they actually borrowed $2.2 billion in new debt. With $650 million of dividends to pay, that $2.2 billion in new money borrowed would only last around 3.5 years. Combine that with the cash that they have, then theoretically they'll last 4.5 years with the money they have for now, and if nothing changes about the business today. So that's about it. I'm going to make a part 2 video about using cash flow like real estate investors instead of profits as an alternative way to determine the safety of your dividends. So stay tuned for that.